I'm very new at this, but I like talking to people, and that's something I've always been very good at. Welcome to the second episode of the District 7 Podmasters podcast. If you want to learn about podcasting or have an idea for a podcast you want to produce, look up our club. Our goal is to help Toastmasters learn how to develop the tools and skills to explore their curiosity in this interesting medium. Now, speaking of exploring curiosity, this interview is with a name that should be familiar to many in District 7 Toastmasters and has a passion for creating community connections. Editor, publisher, community TV producer, past district governor, and only slightly less busy, Phyllis Harmon. How are you today?
Doing well. It's a nice day outside. I'm settled into my chair and I'm ready to talk with you.
Well, I appreciate you helping out. And we had a discussion just getting ready for this interview. And I was excited because you do a lot of the things that I've been learning to do over the last couple of years as we've been staring at our computer screens more often. And I feel like you've got so much information that I could just pluck all that information out of your head and put it in mine. It would make me so much better at everything that I do. The intent of my questions today are to learn a little bit about you, your experiences in Toastmasters, and maybe explore what we can look at over the next year with the District 7 YouTube channel and your experience creating community connections in and outside of Toastmasters. To start with, I always like to ask a question that can't really be prepared for, but the answers are always so interesting and a great way to relax into our discussion. Or maybe that's just me. I don't know. So this is my opening question for you. Phyllis, you only get to listen to one song for the rest of your life. What song is it?
Interesting question, Ray. I listen to a plethora of different music. Usually I will listen to just the music. I'm not so into the words of anything anymore, but the melodic sounds carry me through my days. My husband died last January. He filled the air with sound always. It was mid-February when I realized that there was too much quiet surrounding me. I purposely went out and bought a stereo system because I have at least 500 CDs that I have not listened to in several years. So what song would I listen to for the rest of my life? It was the only song that I could sing. I'm not sure because I haven't listened to music in so long, but I can tell you what eats me deeply into my soul are love songs because they remind me of my days past and hopefully one day my days ahead. So music of the soul brought out in love songs, that's what's got me going right now.
That is a great answer. And that's the wonderful thing about that question is there is no right answer and there is no wrong answer. There's only your answer. I feel like I know a little bit more about you already because I always have a song stuck in my head. If I only could listen to one song for the rest of my life, that's okay. I can just make a melody of it with the rest of the songs in my head because they just continue. Now, I want to ask a little bit about Toastmasters because we touched on this briefly. Can you share when you joined Toastmasters and can you remember the reason why you joined?
Oh, yes. I joined, I don't remember exactly the date. I have a friend who reminds me, but it was about 15 years ago. The reason that I joined is because I was going to lose my job if I did not clean up my Communications Act. I worked for a large healthcare organization and I did workers' compensation. I also placed workers back to work when new jobs were opened. Well, the managers knew I was coming because I was part of HR and I knew where all the jobs were buried. So they would pull them right before I got to them, which angered me, it frustrated me. It made me think that my employer was less than what I thought they should be. Managers would lie to me and tell me that they had pulled the job. They decided they didn't need it. I went back to my manager and I told her that I didn't know what to do. And of course, this was soon after the legal department had called me up and told me to stop it or I could find another job because I was being very angry in emails. My boss told me, you need Toastmasters. So I joined Toastmasters and she was absolutely right. The way that I communicated with people was awful. My stakeholders finally realized that I had changed and they began to help me to place workers back to work. I was able to bring back to the bottom line of that organization over $500,000 a year, just because Toastmasters taught me how to communicate. I will always be thankful. I left the job, but I'm still in Toastmasters.
That's some of the things that I've been sharing with my journey for the last 10 years is just how that evaluation process changes the way you listen to people. You're always looking for the opportunities. It's never the bad things. I love it. That is, no matter how many times I hear the answer to that question, everybody has a similar version of it. And that is well said. What is an aha moment? Something that occurred to you that maybe surprised you at some point in the last 15 years that is something that you might refer to, you might come back to as something that you've learned in the last 15 years?
I think that original beginnings with Toastmasters has led me well. And this is a moment that every time I think of it, it's almost like I was there again. When I was the club growth director, we were so close to being a distinguished district. Just so close. We had 2 weeks left to accumulate the numbers that we needed for both membership and for clubs. Membership was really an issue. I had built 13 clubs that year as club growth director, so I was okay there, but we were short members. This is one of the first times I actually used social media. I sent in a Facebook post out to everybody. It says, we can do this. We are this close. This is what we need. We can do this. And as people started to respond, which surprised me, and they would send back to Facebook, we just signed up 2 new members, I would respond to it. And for the first week that I put that out, our numbers exponentially grew just because I started the spark. I was told not only were we a distinguished district, we were 10 people away from being select distinguished. Just because I started a spark and people responded. I had no idea that people would respond. And what that taught me is if you treat people well, you listen to them and you try to help them solve their problems, then you got them for life. That was a great aha moment for me. And it still fills me with joy when I think about it.
You know what that aha moment makes me think of, and is not to that's an incredible story. There was an international speech winner or runner up from a couple of years ago. Do you remember the speech that I see something in you?
Was there?
That's
Yes.
what that line, that we can do this. I feel like you need a condenser microphone in front of you and just reverberate through it. I mean, we got this. We can do this. What a great aha moment. I'm already enjoying this. You are the district manager for the District 7 YouTube channel and a producer for the TV Toastmasters Club, which is the thing that I feel like we most align with for experience, at least for my current experience and your existing deep experience. And I'm really, really interested in and how you started making video content with Toastmasters. How did that materialize for you? Because there's so many members that I will listen to and they'll be like, I want to film that thing, but I would look terrible or whatever. Just what was the jump from you learning to speak, this Toastmasters one, that led you into video content and creation?
Well, like podcasters, I have a great interest in learning what the field is all about and how I can use it, how I can become a podcaster. You know, it's those siren songs, I think, that keep running through my brain. And being on TV was something that I thoroughly enjoyed. When I think I was district director at that time, one of the people in one of my clubs say, I know someone who would be willing to talk to you. Would you like to have an interview? Well, sure, I can talk about the district. So this gentleman brought me and my PRM at that time to the station. And you know, if I could find that video, I'd watch it again. It was fantastic. I was really good on screen. And I fell in love with myself on television. So I joined TV Toastmasters, not to be in front of the camera, because again, it's that techie stuff, learning how to operate the cameras and the sound systems, using the teleprompter, all of that great technology that TV Toastmasters would allow me to do. Of course, we all needed training, of course.
Mm-hmm.
What that led me to do is I found out that because I was a producer now at TV Toastmasters, I could check out the equipment. So I would take these huge cameras to the conferences and to TLIs, and I would record them. And of course, if you're using community television equipment, then you have to give them something back. So I started taking all of that content, chopping it up into the individual speeches, the contests, and sending them to TV Toastmasters, and they produced them for 2 years within the Portland metro area, which led me further to getting in contact with someone who I had talked to occasionally on LinkedIn, who had a program down in Salem, Oregon, which is the capital of our state. He asked, he asked me to come down and work with him. So I did. And we started putting together, he already had the show, but it became an interview show. I would bring in the talent and then we would interview them. And I did that for 4 years. I have all of that content that he told me that I could produce on television up here. I have yet to do that, but I do have it. Me sitting in the chair, interviewing 2 guys at the same time. Again, where was I? I was on television. I was the star of my own show. That then led me with all of this content. Some of it I wanted to share with the district. I started, we had a District 7 YouTube channel that was one person watching it. So I started another for the district, and all of the content, we have a lot of pathways information out there. James Wans, who was a theater actor at one time, like you, was really a pathways proponent. He put together a lot of videos, and we put them out there on the YouTube channel so that everybody could gain from his experience. I put out all of our contests, all of the speeches. If you get to the district level, then you have a place on YouTube as well as in the community television. So that I've been doing for some time. Then I started my own channel on YouTube just because I wanted to do things outside of the Toastmasters world. So I've been dabbling with that also. So did I answer your question? Probably gave you more than you anticipated. There are many things I still don't know, but I'm learning every day.
You totally did answer my question, and your experience mirrors a lot of mine, although you've got a little bit more experience than mine. My experience only really kicks in, like, I started doing audio work, playing with microphones and stuff when I got I volunteered to be in an ad for the MS Society for a fundraising event we have up here. So I was on the radio for 2 weeks in 2013, and I got paid for it. And then 2 years later, the company that for the fundraiser wanted to reuse the ad again, so they paid me for it again. So 1 hour in the studio gave me a decent. So that was my introduction into technical things. But I'm not here to talk about me. This is just how a moment can how a moment can drag you into a new path that you hadn't really anticipated. It's incredible how you go from almost getting fired to now running TV channels. This is great. I want to talk about Toastmasters and mentoring and team building, because I know how involved these editing projects are and the production and calendars and stuff like that. What kind of a team do you have around you to run the channel in the TV now?
There are a couple of people who have taken an interest in cleaning up, shall we say, what's there. Nothing is where it should be. We should have some type of a categorization process, record keeping, file folders. I don't know how to do that, but there is someone in our district who is now our PQD, the program quality director, who does a very nice job. He's been telling me for 2 years that he will do that. I'll put content out there. I just don't know how to manage it well. When I look for things, I have to scroll through until I find them. I should even do that with my own channel, but I haven't, because I don't know how. Something else to learn, I guess. So
content calendars. The content calendar is something that we talked about in the Podmasters meeting, and it's something that I'm developing for the District 96 channel and for Podmasters, and I can imagine would be almost a silver bullet for running a channel as successful as busy as yours could be. I know to be irreplaceable makes it very hard for one to get a promotion. How big, like, are you currently hunting for anybody with any other specific skills to add to your team, or are you looking to mentor somebody to do some of the stuff that you know how to do?
Well, that's an interesting question. I found that in District 7, and I don't know where to go with it, because everybody who I think might have an interest takes a look at what needs to be done and suddenly has other things they need to do. It was like that with the magazine. It took me 2 years for Leila Sieber and Jennifer Schmidt to step forward, and I did a bit of arm twisting with that. Some of the projects that I get into are very technical because I want them to be absolutely perfect or as superb as I can make them be before I release them to the public. And I'm finding that there are not that many people who want to spend that much time and energy to put out a product. So I find that leading a team hasn't really worked well for me. And I know that's one of the deficits that I have, is that it's so much easier to do it myself than to train someone else. I will keep looking for people who have that interest, and maybe podcasters at some point some people will shake out of the trees, as it were, and want to help with that type of work. Because I think that what we have started in District 7 can be so much more than it is. I also still have access to the TV Toastmasters channel, even though the club itself has closed. And I want to explore how I can make that better, because we have probably over 300 interviews out there with not only Toastmasters, but people from the general public. Content that's really, really interesting, and basically doing what I want to do with Podmasters, which is go out and interview people outside of Toastmasters, those who have a passion for doing something. I think that they need to be heard. So
I watched a few of the videos on the TV Toastmasters channel preparing for this interview, and I really liked how you worked with the camera work. So you were doing over the shoulder, head on interview shots where you would have 2 cameras or even 3 cameras where you have the third cameras. So you're getting into a lot of the technical weeds of it. And it's how do I put this? It takes a certain kind of brain to want to be to get that into it, but it's very rewarding when it does. To find somebody that is wanting to give that a try, and just to succeed and also to fail at it, because that's an important part of the process, because you fail more at the beginning than you do as you get better. If I was a new member to a club and I was thinking of recording my first speech, how would you keep that person from getting discouraged from their first attempts to continue improving?
Well, if we're talking on screen, of course, we've all heard it probably too many times since March of 2020, how to stay within your frame. One of the challenges that I have, whether it's in front of a camera in a studio or on video, is to amp up the energy, because a camera will take 15% of that energy, and you may appear flat if you don't give it a little bit of theatrics. And the James Wants that I mentioned a few minutes ago, that was one of the key pieces that he told me, having been on the stage, is that if you don't do that, you will appear flat. And as I interviewed people and recorded them in the studio, it was very obvious. So I got to the point where I would go in and do a little bit of theatrics with them to tell them at what level they needed to be. If I was talking to someone who wants to do it on Podmasters, if they're going to do a video, or anybody who's on Zoom, I would give them the same piece of advice, is amp it up so that the people on the other side stay interested in what you have to say. I like it when people use a lot of vocal variety and they look right into their camera, because that tells me they're connected with me, that they care about what I want to hear rather than just rattling off a speech. So that's the type of advice I would give to somebody who was either in front of a camera in a studio or on Zoom or any other platform, especially with business presentations. If you just show it out there flat, then that's the response you're going to get. And if you are someone who is giving that presentation to people who are going to put money into your project, you dang well better make sure that they are connected with you. And part of that, again, as we all know, is storytelling, and not just telling a story, but telling a vulnerable story so that you connect with that person and they want to help. I
It's
don't know.
one of the things that I love about the new pathways evaluation forms, and I have one here for speech that I just evaluated, is I love that third question on the pathways evaluation before it goes into the number sheets, that to challenge yourself thing. And I love, I'll put that into the challenge yourself thing of like, be louder until somebody tells you not to be louder. Because if they are not telling you not to be louder, then you're not loud enough.
I have been in a club or two where, and this goes back to some science research done some time ago, that like attracts to like. In a club, if you have members that are very low key and that's the way they operate, that's who they're going to attract or not. Because when people come into a club, they're looking for a way to grow. And if you got everybody who is just happy status quo, it's not going to work. And the reason I tell you that is because I tend to be over the top sometimes if I think it needs it. I was told I was too loud, that I needed to damp it down.
And at some point you can take that advice and say, stuff it, but that's okay. But that's that opportunity is just I call it the superhero, the next rung of the ladder that you can't see is the next thing you're pushing for. I've finished that set of questions, and then I wanted to talk a little bit about our kind of technical stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Have you now the technical stuff I'm really interested in the last year, last 3 years since I took over the District 96 channel, I came up with some tricks and some processes for hybrid clubs, because a lot of clubs were moving from purely online back into in-person meetings. And we came up with some rules and techniques in our area to help those clubs transition back from a hybrid perspective, because they would have had over the last 3 years members that were joining from very far away from where they were normally meeting in person. And we've had variable success with that. But I'm wondering, as a part of your Toastmasters TV channel and the YouTube channel, all of the technical things you've done in the background, you must have developed a lot of tools and processes on your end that have helped your clubs record speeches and presentations. Did you find that really interesting and useful to be able to distribute to other clubs within the district to help them transition back as a hybrid, or keep their online presence and move back into in-person meetings?
Interesting question, Ray, because we in this particular club, we have people who can't come because of home situations. We have other people, like you say, who are out of district who may join us. So what I did is, we are doing the hybrid, the non-in-person part through Zoom. I just bought a 360-degree camera, as well as a speakerphone for the middle of the room. That worked really well And I think that it's going to be a success for this particular club. Other clubs that I have stepped into, one of them I'm no longer a member of, but they were having a hybrid meeting. And I was on Zoom, and it was like I was a flea on the wall. It didn't work. I couldn't see, I could see the side of the speaker. I couldn't see the audience. I couldn't see the timing cards. And I really didn't like it. So I think that if a club is going to be hybrid, they need to consider the equipment that they're using. Now, this camera that I bought, this 360-degree camera, was only $87. It was fairly inexpensive. It wasn't the big owl, which is what, $1,500 or so, depending on where you look at it. But it was $87, and the speakerphone that I bought, all told, it was $129, so that we could bring people in from the outside who could not attend in person. It was a win-win for the club, because I think this is going to help us grow even more so than the 20 members we have, once people learn that we can make it work. So that would be my advice to anybody who is considering it, is come along with us, learn how we're doing it, because I think we're going to be okay. I've heard of other clubs who they have a hybrid meeting, but everybody brings their computer to the meeting and they're all looking at their computers rather than interacting with each other. You could stay home and do that. So I'm very enthusiastic. The name of the club is Merrillhurst, and I might as well give a shout out here. We meet Thursday nights from 6:30 to 8 o'clock. So if you're in the West Lynn area, come join us. Otherwise, join us online and see how we're doing this.
I love that. For my role, I was on the hybrid committee for our district, and we piloted all different kinds of ideas for technology on that. I love the 360-degree camera you've got there. That is next level. The situation that we ended up setting up with for one of my clubs when we were going into hybrid was we had two computers. We had one computer, which was the timer, and one computer, which was the Zoom master. And those were the two key functionaries that we wanted to make sure were existing in the meeting. They actually had to be in the in-person part of the meeting, and they could pin speakers hybrid so that they could speak through the TV. And there's all kinds of stuff we learned, like don't point the camera at the screen that the people are on, because then you end up with this back and forth thing. Make sure that you're muting properly when somebody online is like, we tripped over lots and lots of things, but I think we learned a lot. And that club ultimately didn't end up continuing that way, but I think it was an excellent experience to figure out how to do that in an effective way. And it was really important to know what the camera was pointing at.
The thing with Merrillhurst is the person who owns the Zoom account is one of the people who is always going to be online. And she was one of the district Zoom masters this year. So she's very good at spotlighting and doing all that technical stuff that I've never touched at all.
Yeah. That's one of the things I'm focusing on in my sponsorship role, and that I want to focus on in my sponsorship role is I want to train everybody in that club to be a reasonable Zoom master, because that's an important part of producing everything in the background. If everybody that can know how to spotlight, everybody that can know how to mute, anybody that can know how to punt people out of meetings, that mentoring thing. I said to the sergeant at arms training all the time, is the one role that you can take on as a club exec that you don't want that you want to do as little as possible during the course of the year. You get good at it, and then put everybody else on the spot to get good at it too,
when we first started doing our club meeting, TV Toastmasters, on Zoom, because it's an interview club, basically. We didn't know about spotlighting. what I ended up doing, especially if there was a gallery view, then I ended up cutting that little square with crop in,
Mm-hmm.
I used Premiere Pro, cropped it, and then cropped the other person and then stitched them together so that they actually look like they were talking to each other. So, you know,
Did you?
early,
I shared that evaluation video that I did for District 96. I don't know if you saw it or not, but I didn't do the recording on that one. It was the evaluation contest for 2020, and they had just literally transitioned into online, and I had the gallery view for the introduction. Whoever was recording it had it in gallery view, so they had 25 speakers on the screen. So what I ended up doing was I ended up cropping into the chairperson, and then I was using iMovie, so I couldn't do any layered editing or anything like that. It was very limited, but I cropped it in, and then I did keyframes to move the frame over to the person who was going to be speaking to the next. So you had these video windows of people that are like, it's just like a scene from the Adams, or not the Adams Family, from the Brady Bunch or something like that. Just like, oh, this screen's going up to there, and you're landing on the speaker for the test speaker for the evaluation contest, and then it was in speaker view after the test speaker was on, and I was okay for speaker view for the rest of it. But I have this really interesting opening that, because I now know what I'm doing, I've never been able to replicate. It was just completely by accident the way it worked, but I like it. That's actually the video that the most viewed video on our YouTube channel. Like, it's oddly enough, that evaluation contest for that year was like, it got like 4,500 views or 4,400 views. And all around December of that year, and then into the next year, people are like, oh, this is how you do evaluations. It's
I
plain
like
like that.
it'd be fun to play with on because the District 7 does a lot of, during the week, they'll do some type of a webinar. And they always have the gallery view because nobody ever thinks about spotlighting anybody. And it would be fun to go from the speaker to the gallery and then back, using that technique. That would be fun.
Yeah, it was all done in iMovie, and I was only just learning to edit video at the time. So I was like, for that 90-minute contest that I edited and cut it down to the size that I cut it down to, I think I probably spent 10 hours editing it, just because I'm on a 2011 MacBook Pro. It has the processing power of a peanut and works really, really, really slow. But it ended up being a great way to just learn how to use every single feature that I had available to me. And then when I could afford to get a bigger computer, now I'm on a Mac Mini with Final Cut and all of those fun things. It takes me less time to do the interview, or less time to edit the recording than it takes me to edit, or than it takes me to record the interview.
One of the things that we haven't done since we haven't been meeting in person for conferences is, I used to do all of the promos for the speakers. And one of my favorite ones was several years ago. And we were having it at University of Oregon down in Eugene area. So what I did is I went out to Google Maps, Google World, the spinning world.
Yeah.
I brought that spinning world in, and it went all the way down to that place in Eugene. It was the
Nice.
coolest technique I have ever done. It was great fun putting them together. So, and I always do the big music in the background, as it coming in. So
I've been using Snagit on my computer now since 2020, and I use that for screen recording and screen grabbing. So in Leela's video, Leela's interview, in the opening, when I'm introducing her before she comes on the screen, you'll see the Voices magazine and like the flipping. It's basically from the computer. That was all recorded using that was all recorded on my iPad. with screen recording on my iPad, like the flipping of the camera, and then the page that I zoomed into to say what's the article that we're showing. It was just an element of, that's a thing I can record and just stick in there as an additional element. It didn't distract from the interview at all. It was just part of the opening part. But
I love
there's
that.
it's incredibly nerdy. And then stacking the videos so that I could put me down at the bottom so that you can't really see me, and Leela's up on the corner. And I'm going to probably do the same thing with this video, because, you know, you're the person that should be doing most of the talking, but back and forth, we can play with it.
Doing most of the clipping at the end. Well, I can do that.
Well, and yeah, it's kind of, I expect we could nerd out on video editing for quite a long time. But I wanted to ask, I did have a question written down here specifically about video editing. Can you walk me through what your actual process is like from when you get the raw recording to how long does it usually take you to output it into YouTube or onto the output it as an edited video? What's your process look like there?
Well, it depends on how long the video is, as how long it's going to take, of course. Let's take 5 to 7 minute contest speech. So I cut out everything up to the point, because you know you got all that fluff that goes on before everything starts. So I cut it out to the point where the person's going to start speaking, but I always put in some a header. You know, it says District 7 Toastmasters, and it's got the name of the speech, name of the person, etc., with music, because I always use music in my videos. So I do that, and it rolls, and then I go into what the person is saying. Now, this is not the one for Toastmasters International, because you can't touch those. You just have to.
Yeah, of course.
So I will go through, and if they stumble, I'll chop it out. And if I can, Premiere Pro has a morph tool that if they're in the same place, you've just taken something out, it kind of blends it together. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But, you know, there's always ways to massage those clips so they're not a hard cut. So I will go through and I'll do that. If there's a lot of blank space in there where they're trying to remember, or they're too long a pause, I clip all that crap out, because it's too long and nobody wants to sit there and listen to the pause. So by the time I get done most of and then I'll do a rolling credits at the end that says, thank you to the Zoom team, blah, 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 blah. And then I will put my video piece at the end, you know, post-produced by Wide Focus Videos. And if I'm going to put it on television, then of course I have to do the standard stuff at the end for the television studio, because they want to see their branding also. So that's what I do. Now, what I've been working on, I'm the VPPR for 2 different clubs. Marylhurst, one of them, and the other one is Tell Me a Story. What I did for Marylhurst is, for table topics one night, I had our Zoom master record it, and I said, okay, here are your table topic questions. Why did you join Marylhurst? And so they gave me, most people don't know what 30 seconds is. So they would give me a minute's worth of video. And though I can't cut it down to 30 seconds, I can cut it down to 45 or so, just by taking out a lot of the dead space, the repeats that people do when they're trying to think off the top of their head. And what I did is, I've got 7 people I've just done that for. I created a video frame from Canva that's got all of the information about the club on it, created a circle, and then I'm putting those videos behind that. So what you'll see is, you'll see the postcard with all of the club information, and then this person talking in the background, you know, behind in that circle. So I've got music picked out that will be strictly for Marylhurst. And I'm trying to decide whether I want each of those to be their own little segment or whether I'm going to stitch them all together. I'm kind of going for each of them being separate, and then I can flip them out once a week on the channels. So
Yeah.
that's 7 of
My
them.
one of the things that I've been focused on a lot lately, and I'm not entirely sure how I can leverage it in the Toastmasters sense, but I feel like that is touching on it a little bit, is YouTube Shorts, that under a minute long videos that
Yeah.
becomes that ends up being driven by the algorithm that just pushes out the information that you want to be in. I feel like there is an opportunity there that we don't really I haven't really figured out how to grab onto yet, but I've been working at it from a project manager club, trying to push out project manager bits of information, what a scope statement is, what a project plan is. If I can get it under that 1 minute link, then I can put it in a short for Instagram, I can put it into a short for YouTube, I can put it into a TikTok, I can do anything, and I can leverage those algorithms to drive some interest too. So
That's kind of where I'm heading with this. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to use these, except I do know I want to get them out on social media. I'm not really good at social media because of my age. It kind of bypassed me as I was working and living life. So I'm trying to learn all that I can. And what I'm reading mostly is that choose 1 or 2 channels and just stick with them. And if they don't work, then choose something else. But don't push them all out there at the same time, because they each require something different, a different look, a different feel. And I'm not sure that I have the bandwidth to do all that. So I'm kind of thinking about maybe TikTok, even though it's a Chinese company that I'm not comfortable with. Certainly Facebook, because we have a Facebook, and maybe Twitter or Instagram. I'm not sure what most people are looking at nowadays, so I need to research that also. But these are shorter, I can do that.
Yeah, my feeling is starting to lean towards Instagram, because Instagram also folds into Facebook Reels.
Right.
And also, with only just a little bit of an output tweak, you can change the formatting and it becomes TikTok too. And so like there's almost cross promotion, just with, you could put the same video on 3 different platforms with very little change between them. And I edit them landscape wise, and then I just cut them down to the width of the frame that it needs to be, and output it as that. So it'll be a vertical, even though it'll have all of this extra information on the outside. The only part I'm focusing on is the part that's going to be in the screen for the discussion point. And there's a lot of leverage within that. I expect yeah.
I just did one that I haven't released yet. We have a storyteller coming to my storytelling club on September 12th. And I just created one in Canva with using an Instagram template, the smaller size. And all I did is I created that, and then I had him do an audio, and I'm pushing those together and putting it with music, of course, because that's what I like to do. And I put it out on YouTube. It's now ready to go. I'm going to put it out on social media, probably, if I can figure out how to do it. I'll do it with, because it's just the graphic with him speaking underneath it. How I can put that out on social media, Instagram, and actually have it play. I'd love for it to play as soon as you open the page, but I don't think I can do that. So I still have some work to do to figure that out, and I've got to get that out the door by the first week in September. So
it's all a big learning process.
Yeah,
I'd actually had in my questions to go into editing process or showing videos or stuff like that. But I feel like we've talked about everything that I wanted to talk about already. And we're almost an hour deep into our recording. This is a great interview. I really thank you for this. I have two questions that I wanted to conclude the interview with. I talked to you a little bit, or I emailed you a little bit about, and we talked about them before. So this is the question I want to finish. These are the questions I want to finish this interview off with today. Are you ready for them?
Sure.
All right. So what is a challenge that you might issue to District 7 that will help make this year the best year in recent memory for the District 7 YouTube channel?
For the YouTube channel itself, or what will end up on YouTube? That's
what you're doing with it, what, like, to make you the most successful. What is the challenge you would issue to District 7 to make you more successful?
I think that what we talked about before is we need to clean up the YouTube channel so that it's user friendly, because it is not. If you go in there, it's like going to somebody's desk who never files anything. It's just a hash of everything that we've ever done for the last 10 years. It needs to be cleaned out and cleaned up. And I would challenge District 7 to do that, because I can tell you, I keep adding content and it goes there somewhere.
It's in there.
In there.
So that sounds like a speech you need to make to District 7 is, I see something in you. I need you to do this. And I see it because, that's the kind of thing that I'm like that too. If left to my own devices, I would have leaning towers of paper everywhere. Thank you very much for sitting with me for way longer than I had expected to sit with you, to nerd out about me, about video editing and video content creation and all of the things that sound really interesting for you to do for the next 12 months. Phyllis, thank you for being in episode 2 of the Podmasters podcasting channel.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Just as I'm wrapping up the editing for this video before it posts, I feel it's important to remind you that Podmasters is a club that hasn't chartered yet. So we meet on the first and third Sundays of each month. We're looking for members who want to create podcasts or want to support podcasts, or maybe even do some of the technical stuff. The contact information to get a hold of us is right next to me here. And I hope to see you in an upcoming meeting. Also, we've got more interviews coming up, scheduled in the works. Keep an eye on those. Thanks.